Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty, where it's the word simply, the word refreshing. I'm the facilitator of the conversation, Jared, and with us tonight we got Courtney, Jerome, and Lorraine. Uh, Apologies for first the last Friday in June. Yeah, it was just a whole bunch of a whole lot going on, and we just weren't able to make it happen. But we're here this week and um, expecting the Lord to bless our conversation accordingly. Since the last time we've been here, we've been reading some writings of Paul. Hold on, let me get my Bible reading plan just to confirm I don't say the wrong things. We are in the beginning of July. Yeah, we've been reading. I was in Timothy and Thessalonians. We finished John and went into Thessalonians.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was enjoying John this week. And then in Kings and Chronicles, following the kings in and around Asa, Asa and his son, and Jehoshaphat and some others. So, yeah, and we kicked off the book of Proverbs as well. So our conversation is going to be coming from there. Um, Courtney, you good to go, or should I?
Oh yeah, my phone. Let me just light this one out. Dang. All right, there we go. Let me see. I guess this is a question I had. I didn't get to pose it last time. Maybe we can see how it can relate to something else, or if not, just
If it's from last time, it's perfect because we didn't get to talk last time.
okay. All right, cool.
So it's
Um,
everything from last time we met to now.
okay,
It's
okay.
fair game.
All right. Think this. It was a quote from C.S. Lewis, and I wrote it down. It says, "It's not thinking." It was about humility. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Uh,
Mm.
so, and I guess it was loosely on reading. I was doing in Colossians at the time. I think it was chapter 1, 10 and 11. Loosely. I mean, there's other verses I've looked through that was, you know, talking about in my search, like what is humility, um, and I just just trying to consider in the walk, the Christian walk, those is following Christ, it's just about, I think that's mentioned a lot, having a, guess like, I guess an attitude, and I just don't see that. I guess that's obvious, but I don't see that really promoted socially. It's kind of more like the opposite. And I just want to know, like, it was just like, how important is humility? You know, um, how does that, how do you get to that point? You know,
Tell me more about promoted socially. Tell me more about that
okay.
in terms of what you perceive.
I think what I perceive is more, our society is more about building, more of a, like, it's more about self assurance, power, uh, more about confidence, like even confidence, like power, worthiness. So those are things that I think of if I could just pick words
Right.
out. Um, Whereas humility is like submissive, unassertive, passive. So I just see that there's a
No,
contrast about we're what I think, what I from my reading, what we should be moving towards versus what I think our world, or we say our Western society, is kind of points us towards. Like, this is what you should be doing.
so let us do this. Even if it's loosely based on the Colossians verse, can we look at the Colossians verse and see
For sure.
what at least the Bible idea of humility is?
Oh,
Because
for
as I
sure.
was listening to you read some of the synonyms of humility there, I'm curious as to whether that's what's being described um,
Yeah.
in the Bible generally as the idea of humility.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think yeah, I got a couple other ones too, but we can start there. Colossians chapter 1, verses 10 and 11. Endurance. All right, and then let me duplicate. Let's see, and then I'll probably look at Proverbs right after that. Proverbs 22:4.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So Colossians chapter 1, verses 10 and 11 it says, then the way you live will always honor and please the Lord, and your lives will produce every kind of good fruit. All the while you will grow as you learn to know God better and better. We also pray that you will be strengthened with all his glorious power, so you will have the endurance and patience you need. May you be filled with joy. Uh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, and then, all right, then Proverbs talks about 22:4 says, true humility and fear of the Lord lead to riches, honor, and long life. Um,
You said, yes, Proverbs 22:4.
yeah.
Good. Let's work with that one. Proverbs 22:4.
See, all right, twos.
If you have another New Testament one, that would be great.
Philippians chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. And that reads, instead, he gave up his divine privileges. It says in the Greek, emptied himself. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross.
All right. So I guess we're trying, just for those who have joined us, we're trying to unpack how the Bible is defining humility, because Courtney was perceiving a contrast between what he was seeing in, I guess, his understanding of humility from
Mm,
English definitions, and we're not saying that it is or it isn't at this point. We're just trying to discover how does the Bible define humility, and then we could, work backwards into, uh, you know, what Courtney's question was. So,
mm,
based on Proverbs 22:4, uh,
mm,
which was the first verse that had the word humility,
yeah.
Bible usage in this sense is gentleness and meekness.
Mm,
So, humility in this sense is meekness, condescension, human and subjective modesty, divine objective clemency. It's used as gentleness twice, humility three times, meekness once. Another verse where it's used is Proverbs 15:33, which
15.
says, the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility.
Mm,
And then meekness is another definition, and that it's the same word, but it was translated meekness in oh, this is Proverbs 22:4.
mm,
Let me try this other one. Oh, let's see, where is it translated meekness? In Zephaniah 2, verse 3, where it says, seek the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment, and seek righteousness, seek meekness, it may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. I have always wondered what on earth is meekness, because um, it's a word that seems to only show up in language in circles around me, in Bible circles. People
Yeah.
don't talk about being meek in everyday life around me. I don't know if that happens where you are, Jerry. If you're on your job, people talk about meekness, or meekness is a word that's bandied about in corporate
Well,
circles and whatnot. But I
it,
when I said that a meek, I always like, well, who and what is that? I've struggled with that myself. But anyway,
interestingly enough, it is.
are aligned. Oh, good one, Lorraine. No, I'm gonna put you on blast and say Lorraine said Meek Mill. So he's not probably the only Meek in
No,
public
but Jared,
that I
interestingly
know of.
enough, it is bandied about a bit.
It is?
Yeah, and I can tell you the.
All right, tell me how they use it.
Right. So the context is that even if we understand the authority and autonomy we have in a room when dealing with some of our fellow ministers, whatever the case is, um, the fact that we understand our authority doesn't mean that we can't give deference to them. Doesn't mean that we can't say, for the sake of people at least moving the conversation along, let's let them have their say, or sometimes compromise, let them have the rule, right? So
Really?
it's not viewed as you thinking too lowly of yourself or not understanding your worth. But I have this strength, I have this authority, I have this worth, but I can still compromise. I can still say, well, all right, let me hear from you. Let's try your idea first, and then then maybe if that doesn't work, we can look at other options. Yeah.
So it's more of a service posture.
Yeah.
Mm.
So customer service meekness could look like customer service potentially. One way of seeing meekness could be that. Is that
Yeah. It really is like almost like servant leadership, right? Because you have, senior people within the organization, even senior ministers of government, whatever, adopting that posture of, well, let me seek to serve first. Let me seek to understand your side first before I try to get my point across. Yeah.
hmm. So Karen, I'm gonna ask you, welcome. Do they use meekness in your circles, in your industry? Is meek a word that you come across? Or is it like me? Meek is a word that you only see in spiritual circles when
Like
you're talking about the Beatitudes and Jesus.
like like Meek Mill. They
That's what
use
Lorraine said.
yeah.
Like
That's
meek.
the only that's the only Meek I that's the only
Yeah.
Meek I hear.
All right. So Courtney was asking a question. He had read a quote from C.S. Lewis. Courtney, read that quote again.
It says it's not, I guess, in mention of it says it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less.
Right.
Not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Humility.
That's what meek is.
Humility. We
Humility.
started with humility. So that's what humility he was reading. That was the quote from C.S. Lewis. Humility is not, and then he read what he read. But Courtney was asking, just to restate where we were coming from. Um, he said when he looked up the definition of humility, um, and this quote um, from C.S. Lewis, it seems at odds with how people are in the world today. One of the definitions. Can you read your original definition of humility?
The one I have is submissive, unassertive, passive, insecure.
Right. And
That
when he
that doesn't
used
work
those
in that
words,
doesn't work in our industry.
I use those words, I wondered if that's what biblical humility actually is. So we
Right.
were looking up biblical humility, and the definition that it came up with or synonym for that is meekness. The word is
So if
translated both humility, the same word in the Hebrew anyway was defined or translated in some ways as humility and in other ways as meekness. The one word. So meekness is another idea that underpins biblical humility. So we
it
were
was
that's when you walked in.
well, it's interesting. I was literally having a conversation with somebody last week, and I like seeking advice, and not even advice, but just like I like knowing, what do you think about the way I operate? And a guy told me, he was like, "You think about others way too much," and I was like, "That that's a good thing, right?"
You see
And
what
he
I'm
was like,
saying?
"No." He was like, "No." He was like, you have to be. You were talking about the industry, like you have to be more selfish. You need to actually make sure that you look out for yourself a little bit more. And I think that's the way people tend to operate. I don't think they look at it like the big negative, right? He's just like, it's about preservation. It's about making sure you take care of your family, for all that kind of stuff. But I think that's the way people kind of think. Humility. I think people like to think that they're humble, but it's no no one celebrates humility, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a character. It's definitely a characteristic people love to throw out there. You know, but I don't think it's celebrated. You look at entertainers, you look at athletes, you look at your see. I mean, imposter syndrome is huge. Like you just got to be somebody until you're that, right? And you got to fake it till you make. I mean, it's all these different things that don't preach or lend to the idea of humility.
Mm.
Even the servant leadership, right, which is a big buzzword that you hear. It's there's no humility amongst these guys and ladies.
Interesting. I'm looking at the English meaning of humility, and it seems distant from meek. Like in English, they're not necessarily synonymous. They're two different ideas.
And so, just a real quick, so Courtney was what the definition Courtney you read, was that humility or meekness?
Mine was for humility.
Humility. Okay,
Mm.
go ahead,
But
Jerry.
when we looked up a verse that spoke about humility in Proverbs, that word that was given, hold on, let me get it. Proverbs 22:4.
20,
Uh,
not that
by
one.
humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. That word is gentleness and meekness, modesty.
Mm.
And while it's
Humility, modesty.
translated humility 3 times, it's translated gentleness 2 times and meekness once.
And then meekness is like quiet, gentle, easily imposed on, and submissive is what I found as far as the dictionary is concerned.
The meek shall inherit the earth. Church.
Right. What's interesting now is that I am looking at Merriam-Webster, and Merriam-Webster leverages it as a contrast word. So it doesn't give it its own definition. Merriam-Webster says, free from pride and arrogance, or arrogance.
It's meek.
It's humility.
Oh, it's humility.
Now, the verse where
I can see that.
the New Testament verse that speaks about Jesus humbling himself, that word is not this. That word is to abase oneself. Right? Let me see if I can pull that one back up.
To abase oneself.
Yeah. Let me get the actual word because I don't want to missay it.
Yeah, that's like the English one where it says to be easily imposed on. That would be in line with abase
That's
and submissive. Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with that. Jesus, I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, and I don't see Jesus being, easily imposed on, or
Absolutely not.
I mean, if we look at him as the example, right? So
the word tapino, it says to abase, to bring low, humble self, to make low, to bring low, to reduce to level, to bring into a humble condition, to reduce to meager circumstances, to assign a lower rank or place, to be ranked below others who are honored and rewarded, to lower, depress one's soul, bring down one's pride, to have a modest opinion of oneself, to behave in an unassuming manner, to be devoid of all haughtiness.
So that's different. because number one, and I think in all of those examples, there is number one, control, and there's number two, and you know, that's very intentional. So to do something, like to be less, they're that person is controlling their circumstance. They're making a choice to do something. The circumstance isn't necessarily creating the condition. And so I think that I see that, right? Because Jesus was very intentional and, in the conversation with Peter and, about washing feet, right? He was very intentional about I'm putting myself here, right? So that you understand, right? Because there's no way you're going to make it if I don't do this, right? That was very intentional. But which is far different than a circumstance or situation making you feel that way.
I mean, to your point, Kenrick, it's like where he said, you know, no one takes my life, I lay it down, right?
Correct.
So it's like I have this authority, this power, and I am going to cede it, as it were, for a greater good. But it's not like you're imposing something on me or taking something from me, right?
To in turn, that particular situation isn't placing you in a lower position. You're dictating the
Yeah,
terms.
which means you're technically the bigger person, right?
Correct.
So Gerald just put in the chat, or he put in the chat a few minutes ago, and I'm just now seeing it. Philippians 2:3. Courtney, could you get us that and read it? I feel like that verse gives us a definition of that concept without using the word.
Oh, all right, I got you. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourselves.
So,
But that's like what
Kenrick don't like
Kenrick
that.
said. That's what just the
Kenrick don't
dilemma.
like that one
Kenrick
either.
was just talking about at his job.
the King
I don't
James
know.
Version doesn't use the word humble there. It
Or-
says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves." And that lowliness of mind is a different word.
Can y'all define better than themselves? I have a problem with that one.
Because is it because some people don't think very highly of themselves?
So I
I don't think someone's better than me.
Okay.
Let's esteem each other better than themselves. I believe that is along the lines of what Courtney read in his first definition of.
That's a little different. Okay, esteem someone better than themselves. I think is a little okay. I get that one.
So
That makes sense.
the interpretation that was shared with me, that I like is, it's basically like the concept of, you're in the line at the checkout stand, you got a cart full of groceries, someone comes with just two items in their hand, and you give them a place in front of you. So it's not that they're better than you, you're giving them a spot in front of you, all things considered. You're letting them go
But
ahead of you, all things considered.
I'm on my
But if
way,
they got a
y'all.
whole cart
I'm
full
on
of
my-
stuff, though. Is it only when they got two items? Because I think it's more of esteeming another person above yourself when they got a whole cart full and you got two items.
Well, right, but it's just the fact that you're willing to make that compromise, let them get ahead of you, right?
Right.
Correct.
Which
It's
you
I
don't
think
have
Costco
to
full.
do.
It's like,
it's the
oh,
ask-
you
it's
just
the
gonna
it's
go ahead. Okay.
Yes, Courtney.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's the holding of someone like in a higher regard, right? Not because of anything that they did, just because of your perspective and the way you see them, just the world and people, right? I was having better because I thought it was saying like there's more value associated with you than me, right? And I'm just like,
And you know what may have done that? When we read just a part of the verse, because there's a fuller thought here. I'm reading it in the New International Version. He says, so he starts, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one in mind. Then he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others.
Completely different context.
So that
Yes.
that to me
Agreed.
changes it some.
Who said that?
That was Pablo.
Yes, agreed.
And then he goes into talking about Jesus, who being in the very, he said, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset of Jesus Christ or Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even a death on the cross, which then changes a whole lot the definition of humble there.
Yeah, and that was the example.
So it's not thinking, not giving yourself so it's not valuing yourself less, as Courtney said, but it's not giving yourself so much importance that it contributes to you being prideful. It's being as almost like being secure enough in yourself to not have to,
But that's kind of what the relation.
chest.
That's kind of what the relation, what God does. Like if you truly look at it, I mean, and I think that's where Jesus was. Like, at the end of the day, it's still God was in the position, right? So when you truly look at it, I can truly be humble because I know, when I look at myself, in my relationship to God, I have to be humble. Like there's, right, and that's where Jesus was.
So how do you balance marketing and promoting the good parts of you and being humble, like on a resume and a job application, so to speak? Because they're gonna hire you if you make yourself look attractive. But how do you do that without being glorious? And is there a balance there, or does humility demand that you don't do that, or does humility define the approach to doing that? And I'm asking that because I guess that's where Courtney is in society's world today. There's this, self-promotion, self-actualization, this, you're your own brand, so you have to promote your brand. But
Did
can
Jesus
you do
not
that?
self-promote?
Can you do that and be humble?
Did Jesus not self-promote?
I don't know that he did.
Eh.
I mean, we could debate it.
He father promoted.
Promoting his
He
father.
father promoted.
He
didn't Jesus
self-promoted
promote.
and told people, "Don't promote me. Like, don't go
Yeah.
out there talking about me."
But he did come. He did.
No,
he
I
was pretty
think-
blunt about who he was and his.
100%.
No, he said, if you say I am, he's.
No, but remember that time when he was
No,
saying the Son of
not
Man came to
necessarily.
earth, I am the way. And so much of the Pharisees like, but you liken yourself to the Father. And he's like, if you have seen me, you've seen the Father, right? I am one with the Father. That's pretty.
It's a quote.
But on a hold on, but that's different. On a resume, you're not saying I'm going to save your company, right? On a resume, you're stating
Quality.
this is what I've done.
I saved that company. I'm not going to save yours.
Not even that.
that one.
I added.
I could
value.
save yours.
I added value here. It's quantitative, right? I've
Yeah.
done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. And by the way, ask about me, which is completely what Jesus did.
Yep.
But Jesus didn't do that. He didn't say, I did this and I did this.
Huh?
He just did this, and others ran with the story.
Yeah, let others be the
Jesus
one.
never came out and said what he did. He didn't. I mean, we could look to see if there's
No. But Jesus talked about his qualities, right? Especially with his disciples, right?
where, when. Let's find an example. Even if it's conceptual, maybe you can't find the verse, but you can think of an instance, a story where he.
No, but I mean, even him saying the Son of Man, who he was, came to seek and save that was lost. The save is big because within the Jewish culture, the only person who could save is God the Father. So he's letting you know this is what I can do, this is what I'm here to do, this is how it's gonna happen.
Jerry, help me find that verse.
One second.
I felt like he father promoted more than he Jesus promoted.
You said what?
I feel like he father promoted more than he Jesus promoted.
That's Luke 19.
I don't disagree with
Luke
that.
19, yeah. But I to Courtney's point, I think you see the difference to when, like, you know, the resume really speaks to what you've done, what you can do, but then you sit in an interview and there are people who you just know when they've crossed the line from confident to just being cocky, and cocky turns most people off. Because cocky implies that you're infallible, and that you also you have significant blind spots, and you don't even care about the fact that you have blind spots, because it's like, I am it. There's nothing better. I can't do wrong. Whatever, right? That's how the cockiness comes across, as opposed to the confidence, which says, this is what I'm capable of, but I'm still willing to work with people, learn from people, any number of things, right?
And when they ask that question, like, what is your weakness? Tell me an area where you did something wrong and how did it turn? Like, when you can't answer those questions and you have
They already know that, yeah, you will self-evaluate.
You can't answer those questions?
No, I said when you cannot, that shows, that adds to the cockiness, that adds to the, so you have no areas of improvement.
No, that means you're not self-aware.
Right.
Yeah,
I can think of 100 of those.
Look, okay.
But like, what if you want the job and it says, "Hey, this person needs to be very detail oriented," and you're like, "Hey, I drift off sometimes. I don't really pay attention sometimes." It's like, so you got to have a strategy.
But like, I got Adderall.
So I've been told.
Yeah, I always struggle with the balance between humility and promoting self. Like, I think about Jesus. He speaks about what his job was. Like, the Son of Man. I read the verse. The Son of Man came to seek and save that was lost. The context was he was responding to Zacchaeus, right? And he was telling Zacchaeus, he had the exchange with Zacchaeus, and people were muttering about it. And then Zacchaeus comes and says he's going to make this change. And it's in that context, in responding to Zacchaeus' statement, he said, "Today salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost." He was just really stating, Zacchaeus' response demonstrates that he's doing what he came to do.
Right.
But he's having
really self-promotion.
But he's having conversations about himself all the time with the Pharisees. Whether or not they understood what he was saying, he was still talking about himself.
When they were asking questions about him.
That's fine. But he was still explaining who he was.
What he was doing. Like,
what's the difference?
Even if we go to those exchanges, he talks about him only doing what the Father tells him, and him having such a good relationship with the Father that he's clarifying that they don't believe, and all the conversations kind of go this. They don't believe he came from God, is being directed by God. And he's saying, yes, I am, and I have this relationship with him. So anything that I'm doing is really about him. Like, he doesn't announce the things, he doesn't go and even when he does things publicly, it's not to further his notoriety. All right. His notoriety is being driven by all the reports about him. So much so that when he comes to Pilate, right, he's like, "Is that your idea, or did somebody else tell you about me?" Right? He doesn't even offer to pump up himself and say, "Yeah,
So let me ask: is he doing that because he's playing the role that everyone else should play, or is he doing that because he knows that he's it?
Perfect question. Should we then be following that part of his example? And I ask because there's another verse in the Bible, and maybe this just I don't want to be at the risk of proof texting, but there's the idea of when you go and you serve others, you don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. But
Yeah.
today, whenever you make a charitable contribution or anything, you pictures for the gram on your church website or your organization website so that people know what you're doing, right? And I'm wondering, is that opposed? Is that not humility? Is there a challenge there? It's good press, but
Mm.
like
Like
what?
is that let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify the Father in heaven?
Now, if the news came and took pictures and ran with it, one thing. But if you have your own team that's packaging up and creating pamphlets to put out, is that something else? And I'm not saying it should be done or not. I'm asking questions for reflection, right? I'm not.
I mean, he
Mm.
was. I mean,
Dang.
he was. So it's.
Jesus wasn't making pamphlets.
I'm not sorry. I'm not
He
Nah.
didn't have a
saying
website.
The disciples were. Sorry, let me.
Jesus.com,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, everybody was making. Everybody was making bulletin board material,
Okay.
right? The Pharisees were putting. They were getting, done left and right. Um, and yes, he did talk a lot about what his father, but he was still like pointing to himself, right?
How? Can you give me an
I'm the one.
example?
There's plenty of times where he's like, I'm the one that came, like I'm the one that's been chosen. I'm the one that all of
I
that
give
kind of
you
stuff.
one example for
All right.
Kenrick. I'm just because it's in John. We read when
We read through
he's
it. Yep.
All
we
right. Come on.
talking
Give me.
chapter 4 when he's talking to the
Oh,
Samaritan woman.
chapter 7, but go ahead. Yeah. Start with
the
Bo.
story, the story, the story of the Samaritan woman, and I'm just keep staring at the verse uh, at the end of that section, verse 26, when he said, Jesus, all right, let's go before that. He tells her all this stuff. The woman said in 25, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declares, I, the one speaking to you, I am he.
All right. But
But
that's
that's answering a question. That's stating a
but
I
Oh
agree
fact.
my
too.
but
gosh.
even
But then
but even
this is
let's
just
go
to
Courtney.
stir the that's just to stir the pot for Kendrick. That's
Yeah. Well, let's go to verse 10, which happens before that, right?
okay. Yeah, yeah.
He said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. So,
Yeah.
he's saying he's being humble in this moment,
Yeah.
right? Right? And then he's leading up to when she now says she's looking for the Messiah, right? And you know, and she's looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Mhm.
If he now says, yeah, I am he, now he can deliver that message.
Yeah.
But that's after she shows her interest, right?
I see what you mean. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true.
So
And
Yeah.
and it was a one-on-one conversation. And he
Right.
doesn't introduce who he is until she's like, I'm looking to hear from that guy,
When she
right?
showed that she was thirsty. And then he's just
Correct.
like, all right.
all
Otherwise, he
right.
probably would have let
So
it pass by.
and maybe there's nothing specific that I found yet, but there is this air, right? So John 7,
Ooh, okay.
right? So John 7, um, without having to go through the whole thing, it kind of starts at you kind of need a lot of it to figure it out. But um let's go 21.
21.
So or like 20.
21.
The crowd saying you are demon possessed. The crowd answered, who is trying to kill you? Jesus said to them, I did one miracle and you are all amazed. Yet because Moses gave you circumcision, though actually it did not come from Moses, but from the patriarchs, you circumcised the boy on the Sabbath. Now, if a boy can be circumcised on the Sabbath, so that the law of the Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly. At this point, some of the people of Jerusalem began to ask, isn't this the man they're trying to kill? Here he is speaking publicly, and they are not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really conclude that he is the Messiah? But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, no one will know where he's from. Then Jesus, still teaching in the temple courts, cried out, Yes, you know me, and you know where I am from. I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You don't know him, but I know him, because I am from him and he sent me. At this they tried to seize him, but no one laid hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Still many in the crowd believed in him. They said, when the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man? The Pharisees heard the crowd whispering such things about him. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees Pharisees sent temple guards to arrest him. Jesus said, I am only with you for a short time, and then I'm going to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live, scattered among the Greeks, and teach the Greeks? What did he mean when he said, you will look for me, but you will not find me? Where I'm going, you cannot go, or you cannot come. I mean, it's giving, he's telling them exactly who he is. He's giving them every clue, right? And he's confidently saying it.
But look, when this
and he knows his time hasn't come, so he's like, y'all can't touch me.
But look, when this comes. This comes when they were challenging
Who he was.
when they were having doubts about it. And because they're having these doubts publicly, the other
Who
people,
was having doubts about it?
the people, they were divided.
Crowd.
So he's listening to the crowd talk. He's in the crowd and conversation is happening back and forth, right? There are people who believe and there are people who don't. And there is this debate happening, people shoo-shooing. So he's hearing this shoo-shoo and trying to validate that he has come from God. Because even before that, in verse 16, he's been saying, and the whole theme of this thing is, my teaching is not my own, it comes from the one who sent me.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to validate not so much who he is, but who he is because of who sent him.
Correct. Facts. But there's no one else saying that. Like, he's letting them know, I am who I am. And granted, yes, he's 100% always pointing to his father, but he's still telling you who he is.
Right, but I don't think there's something wrong with that. I don't think that
No. It's not wrong.
I don't think it clashes with the humility or the meekness, though. I think it's like a director of a certain department saying, this is my position, this is what I'm able to do for you, blah 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 blah. Like, it doesn't mean they're being cocky. It depends on like their tone and how they're like. There's other things that will communicate where they're coming from, maybe. But I mean, just stating facts, I don't think would clash against the humility or the meekness.
That's my point. I'm saying that, in the question was, the line between, how do you identify on a resume, right? What's the line between being, confident in who you are and then, cocky, right? And I'm like, Jesus walked that line. He was 100%, giving credit, right? But he still stated who he is.
Right.
So one of the challenges that I'm having here is that he does not initiate these conversations. He is not the initiator of the presentation, right? If we go back to the beginning of this chapter, his brothers was telling him, you want to be a public figure? You should go in Galilee for the festival and show up. His brothers are telling him, go promote yourself, right? He's like, yeah, that is not my thing. I'm going to...
Yeah, but he gets everybody else to promote him.
And then he goes under low, right? And he does his job, and then everybody else does it. Now, granted, I will agree with you in that sense. I don't know how intentional he was in that. Maybe.
That was his whole point. That's why he's here.
He got the crowd to promote him. He didn't actually do it himself, right?
Yeah. He had 12 dudes.
Right.
He had 12 dudes to promote him.
Yeah,
that was the whole point of this whole thing is to promote.
Promote the message or promote him?
Same.
I did the same.
So,
same.
Okay.
I don't know. I
What?
don't know. And here's why I don't know.
What is the
Because
message
that's
about?
where the
What's
Jews
the
got
message about?
that's where the Jews got messed up.
No,
Right?
what's
The
the
Jews
message about?
stay with me. I'm gonna get to your question, but let me finish my idea. The Jews got messed up because they were given a job similar to a message, even though we make that equivalency there, and they thought that the message was and the job was them, right? They took
Sure.
a sense of what their responsibility was and made it about them.
Mhm.
And I would argue that it wasn't so much that Jesus's language and the way that it's reflected in here, he is promoting the message of his role more than himself. That's my proposition, assertion, proposition for reflection and rebuttal.
So
I mean,
what I think we read it. It was John, was it 12? I don't know where it was. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father but by. I mean,
stating facts. Stating facts.
no, those are facts.
But what's the context in which that statement is made?
I don't memorize the verse before.
All right.
Can't even tell you where it's from. It was in John though. We read it.
John 14.
John 14.
See?
No, stop. What John 14? What?
We can start with verse 1.
No, let's not.
So here he is.
Let's read it out of context. What is it?
Verse 1. Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me so that you can be where I am. You know the way to the place I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you'll know the Father as well. From now on, you do know him and seen him. The thought there, the complete thought is still about the Father and him being an access point to the Father.
No. The access point to the Father.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one else.
But the idea is to know the Father.
Understand. But you're not going to know the Father unless you know me, because I'm the way. There's no
You
bypass.
say it different, Kendrick. You say it
No
different.
bypass. There's no service road. This is it. Pay to talk.
Oh gosh. So wait. So even the resume thought, right? So what about pastors writing their own intros before the sermons and they giving it to the church for the
Oh, that's why those things are so long.
No comment.
Wow.
No comment.
Wow. Okay.
No comment. And then having a 13-year-old read it. No comment. No.
I mean, all the accolades, all the things,
Yep.
all the the whole.
Ask about me. You know why I'm here. Give me that per diem.
Yeah, so
Might as well wait
always-
till after they finish talking. Then they could promote. Let's see if it was on par. I'm just saying.
Whatever.
He said, we talk later.
Really, Lorraine? Really?
We talk later. It's all good.
She makes a good point.
I literally popped in my head. I was like, yeah, that's like when they have those long
Too good of a point.
those
Why?
5-page intros. Like, bruh, okay.
I mean, if you go on, Kenrick.
What's
no
it
one comes
really
to the Father
about,
except by
Kenrick?
me. If you know me, you'll know the Father as well. From now on, you know him and have seen him. I didn't hear what was said. What said?
Oh, I just said, what's it really about, Kenrick? Why are we here?
I'm just saying, Jesus knew his role.
Yes, he did know his role.
And Jesus knew that he was vital to this process. It was imperative
Yes,
that this process wasn't going to get done without him.
correct. But he was clear about what the process was.
100% agree. And I'm not saying he's cocky. I'm not saying he's arrogant. I'm just saying he understood his role. And
Correct.
he knew and he was able to communicate effectively what it is that you need to do and why he was significant in this role. It had to be him.
Yes.
I think it's presentation that adds a lot to the humility, right? Like, or the meekness, because something said in one way and said in a different can communicate two different messages, even though it's the same words. So if he was like, "I'm the way," that communicates something different versus, like, I'm him. Like,
so he didn't have a chain. He didn't have a chain that said "I am," and it was just like just chilling.
Iam, who is Iam?
Yeah, who is I?
No, 100% presentation, and his presentation. They said he wasn't cute.
It's not. It's also.
He's not
It's
attractive.
also.
He wore old clothes. He didn't wear anything fancy. Like, he was, all that kind of stuff. Like, all of that mattered.
I think it was also, as you would say, emphasis on the wrong syllable. I think Jesus's emphasis was always, while I am the way to the Father, and the Father, and you getting to the Father is what's important.
Agreed.
And that knowing me is going to help you with that. And so his emphasis was always over there. and while, yes, he was important and he understood his importance didn't overshadow the other thing. And I think that's what happened with the Jews. Their emphasis on themselves as being the chosen ones overshadowed the mission and their role, as important as it was, because they were selected from years before through promise to Abraham, right? So they were truly the chosen ones.
Agreed.
And took it as that they're better than everybody else.
So I think maybe even that helps us to elaborate the difference between humility. Where's your emphasis?
But I think that's why, I actually agree with, when I first jumped on, it was, the quote. I thought, when you think about it, I actually don't disagree with it. It is about, the emphasis should be on others. Right. And Jesus is, to your point, emphasis, actually went both ways. He was looking at the people, right? And making sure that he was that conduit, that facilitator from, to the Father.
And he didn't think less of himself, which is the first part of the thing.
Correct.
He was like, I am that guy. I am the one who's going to do this. And he was secure in that identity.
I think too, like, our culture, like, if you saw somebody operating in meekness, a lot of times you'll hear people tell you, don't let them walk all over you. Don't let them, it's like that kind of conversation. So it's like, no, you're right. I'm, I'm not supposed, but when you know that the interpretation they're having from looking outward, like looking from the outside, may seem as though this person's walking all over you. But within, that you are operating in the way that you're supposed to operate in. And it's not a matter of this person's better than me. I, within me, know that I'm esteeming this person above myself, not them taking advantage of me. It's like similar to where we talked about Jesus saying,
they don't take my life, I lay it down.
Right, they don't take my life. Right, like I'm choosing to allow this thing. I'm choosing, But it's almost like my struggle is usually where's the line? Is
Where's
there
the
a line?
Where's the line of, just to be more clear, where's the line of?
Like, where's the line of putting others before you? So not like your value's less, but is there a line to where sometimes you have to say, because there's a lot, there's this, I keep being told about self-care and what I need to do for myself, which is something I have a hard time with. And a lot of times you'll hear like, sometimes just say no, or sometimes just, so someone's like, so is there a line? Where's the line? How do you know where that line is?
Oh, I like that because I hear that a lot too. That's self-care above everything. Right.
So there's a slippery slope there because self-care has become a term that well-intentioned, but really means I don't care about nobody else but me. On the line, right?
Yeah.
Or me first, right? And while there is value in the intention of you can't pour from an empty cup,
Right.
and you see some of that in Jesus, like he made sure he went and did his rejuvenation before he dealt with whatever, and that he was stocked and supplied. It's a slippery slope.
So there's a line. It's just, where's the line?
I would say the line is, I would argue or support, propose that the line is has to do with balance, and the nature of the task, right? Or I would even say faithfulness to holistic faithfulness. Because if you are valuing others in a way that you're being now unfaithful to you, or to your responsibilities to yourself, then you're not experiencing that balance or being completely faithful. So I think it's not a clear-cut line, but an evaluation of
Individual circumstances and what's
faithfulness in my circumstance.
Right.
Jerry, you look like you have a thought over there. And there's a light shining.
And the lighting, right? The lighting is crazy.
So I was waiting for Angel to
into the light.
The deep voice.
No, I'm ruminating on that one. That is, yeah.
That is challenging for you, or
it's not challenging. It's like I'm piecing together, even with the different examples we raise of how Christ would operate. How that might actually be very true. Because I just kept circling back to that thing you said where he wasn't the one doing the promoting or starting the conversations, or so it's more like it's not a proactive thing to aggrandize himself. It's like you ask a question, you're looking for clarity, I will respond with an answer. And in responding, I'm not shirking my role, my responsibility, my authority, my power, anything, but I'm keeping the focus on why I'm here, and I'm here to serve and save you. It's not about, here's all the accolades from heaven, here's all the stuff I created, here's all the battles I've fought and won, here's how I'm gonna have the keys to hell and the grave and all of that stuff, right? But it could be for him it was good. I just see for us how it could be, to your point, a slippery slope if we start the whole, because this is where you saw my brain going, right? How do you manage that divide without sliding down the slope? So like, if I look at like some of my mentors, Myron Golden, Darius, Daniel, whatever, they can they seem to do a pretty good job of it, but there's still people who think even they are being a little bit cocky. And is it that they're being cocky, being confident, or is it sometimes just based on people's experience and how they view themselves? They're interpreting you and your actions. Because if I don't feel good about myself, anybody who's
100%.
who's confident, I'm gonna be like, oh, why Kenrick so cocky? Kenrick's not cocky. Kenrick just understand and appreciates his own value, right? But if I don't understand and appreciate mine, then it's like, so it's like you can't really. It's a thin line to walk, but it's like at the same time you have to give yourself grace, knowing that people are just gonna be like, people will hate anyway,
Mm.
right? The minute you say confidently, yeah, well, this is what I think we should do, and then they go down this, and they wouldn't even consider that maybe you know what to do because you've tried it 100 different ways, found the one way that worked multiple times, so that's the way you're gonna stick to it.
I hear you. I hear you. I just know as I'm listening, I understand in the world that we live in the value and the importance of marketing, but marketing sits on an idea that seems at odds with what we've been discussing about humility.
Well, I guess that's my thing. I don't know if marketing necessarily does.
It doesn't sit on something that is. I'm not saying marketing is bad. First of all, marketing has that's my first thought. It has a place, and I understand its value to in the business place. So let me say that. Just marketing has an aspect of putting yourself out there in front of the customer in a way that you are selling yourself, as opposed to what we saw with Jesus, for instance.
But what? Go ahead.
The word of mouth, doing it for you. It's you in charge of it.
Well, I think that's also part of it, right? I mean, so I don't market well, right? I'm not a sales guy. Would be horrible at sales.
I hate marketing.
But at the end of the day, like if you have something, right, and you can show the value of that something, right, and because of who you are and your character, right, and people begin to trust you to be a person of your word and a person who stands behind this particular product, and to ensure that that person's going to do, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you're successful with whatever this product is I'm selling, right? I think that's completely different as opposed to, and I think that's kind of what, that's probably on par more with who Jesus was, right? As opposed to, someone self-promoting themselves, promoting themselves,
Right.
and you buying into something because it's them saying it without any regard of what the product. You're only buying that person. He said it. I'm putting myself there, and I think that's what you see a lot of, right? That's why people use celebrity endorsers, right? They used it, and you value them more than the product at this point. It gives them awareness. Maybe you'll find value in the product after you use it, or when you use the product, you're like, "This is some garbage," right? But at the end of the day, like this, they use people, endorsers, right? And Jesus did it too.
So I was about to say, I would say that then God used Jesus to market the good news, right?
And then Jesus, and Jesus reversed with reverse psychology. It was like, don't tell nobody.
Oh wow, Kevin, wow.
Don't go from not walking for
nobody,
40 years
To
to
make a
walking.
valid
Don't
point,
tell
Kerry,
nobody.
because
Don't run and tell it.
the signs and miracles were to facilitate the message.
100%.
They were marketing tools for the message.
100%.
But here's the thing with that, Jared. This is just like, again, the people who, influencers, whatever, who bring value are people who focus on a message and how they're serving. So all the stuff that they do is around the message and how they're serving, which is what Jesus did. As opposed to the people where it's just about, they're on Instagram flexing. And it's not even about the message, it's just like, look at my new jet, look at my Lambo, look at my this, look at my that, look at my the other. One of these, I think it was Jim Rohn or one of these guys said, these sales guys said, if you would see an ad every day for, whoever, VW, Toyota, Ford, whatever, you never see an ad for a Rolls Royce. But where you will see a Rolls Royce is at an air show. And it's not even really an ad, they'll just have it parked next to a jet, because the expectation is if you're going to be able to afford a $35 million jet, you can afford an $800,000 color. So they'll just have it parked right there, right? They don't really need to have hype and advertise and market. In my mind,
And that exclusivity is what like attracts you. Let them.
Yeah. But it's also because they know and understand the product, and they're not really competing with anyone. They can just, which is kind of like the approach I saw Jesus taking, where it's more like a reactive, like, well, if you're coming looking for good stuff, here I am. But it's not like he has to go out and brag about why he's better than all these other prophets. And you know what I mean?
When you end your sermon with "Let them that have ears, let them hear," like, really, dude, like, really.
Exactly. It's like drops my.
Everybody's like, "Yo, I got ears. I can hear." Like,
so it's more about the how than the what. It's not these ideas in themselves are bad, but it's the motivation behind it and the object or the emphasis that's being placed. So it's not marketing or not marketing. It's not promotion or not promotion. It's what am I promoting and how am I doing it?
And I think I agree with that. I think that is the case. And I think you see that dichotomy again on social media, where you see people who are bringing value, whatever the value is. It might be in life hacks, it might be in whatever. And then you see the other people who are just, look at me, I'm on a trip to Dubai. Look at me, I'm this and this. And they get followers, but it's like, well, what is the substance, the benefit you bring to the lives of others outside of your pride, your arrogance, and people just wishing they were like you? Because I don't see, I don't see genuinely successful people following the Kardashians, because they're busy living their own successful life, right? Living their best life now. The people who aren't, who might never make it to Dubai, the ones sitting there looking at somebody's influences, but I wish I had a Lambo truck, right?
They make trucks now?
Huh? It's parked right by the jet.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, it's true.
I didn't know they make. I thought all their cars were two-door cars.
I
They
saw it on the
got
road.
the SUV, the SUV.
Wow.
I guess they had to. Everybody's buying SUVs.
Yeah.
Porsche had to make one now, and they didn't
When
know.
you saw Ferrari bring out an SUV, that's when you know, okay, it's over.
That's a problem.
Yeah, you gotta get
So-
that crossover.
Is boldness and cockiness the same thing?
I don't think so.
No.
And I think, I'll be honest, the reason I really like this conversation tonight, not that I don't like other conversations every other night, but it's because the answers keep coming back to Christ is the example of how we do it. Because it's like when he was, 12 years old in the synagogue, and he had another drop bike moment, right? Today is the scripture fulfilled in your ears. Bow, walks off stage. Right? He's bold, but it's not like he's...
Yeah, bold is more like doing something or saying something that needs to be said when it needs to be said.
Yeah.
It's contrasted timid.
Yeah, which is where you're shirking. Timid actually implies that you're shirking duty.
Shirking responsibility.
Something you know you have to do this. It should be done, and you're like, not me.
Or you just kind of, do a little bit, or
Yeah. It's
Cocky
like
is
you just dip your toes in the water and then you back away, right?
or it's,
So you can be bold and meek at the same time.
100%.
yeah.
I think Jesus
And you
was.
can be bold and cocky at the same time.
Right. Okay.
Think about Sister Act 2.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Oh
Impressive.
Happy Day.
Okay.
When
Okay.
Ryan Toby was doing Oh Happy Day.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He
Good
went from
example.
being timid to bold, but he
Yeah.
never went to cocky.
Yeah. Is it then that it can be a progression, right? So you're timid because you don't understand whose you are and who you are. You figure those two things out and you become bold. But then if you start forgetting again whose you are and thinking it's all
Transition.
about you, then you get to cocky, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Facts. Very well said.
Word. Courtney, how you feel there?
I feel good. I feel good. I always have wrestling with something, partial questions and random thoughts around it, and you guys just figured it all out for me.
I don't know that we figured it out, but yeah.
And man, I feel
He
like
said for him.
yeah, for me,
He
for me.
settled.
He's not esteeming you right now, Jared. He's just esteeming himself.
I'm just saying. I understand. I understand. Yeah, I appreciated what you guys shared. It deepened it for me. You know. Yeah.
So
For him right now.
Yeah, and for everybody watching, because I know people are still like, some people more caught up in what's being promoted too. So, I mean, I just like to ask questions for the audience that watch and that will watch in the future. You know, where are we supposed to be, and like, and where in our environment, and where we supposed to go. Like, we talk about, if we're supposed to be the light of the world, if we're supposed to be this lighthouse on the top of a hill, whatever the case is, like how are we supposed to be moving differently? If the crowd is going this way, where are we supposed to be going?
yeah.
So I had a mini question to your question though. Are we supposed to be so like I mentioned earlier, um, usually when you present as being meek and humble,
Mhm.
it's viewed by the majority of culture as being weak. Are we supposed to be comfortable with being seen as weak?
I would put um I would put John 19 as a potential starting point for a response to that. It may lead us into the next conversation, but John 19, 10 to 11.
Okay. That says, "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Do you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin."
Does that have any answer to your question, Lorraine?
I mean, I understand. At least what I'm taking from that is him understanding that he is not weak. He's choosing to move as he's guided by the Father. I'm just so a lot of people are not comfortable with being perceived as weak.
Mm.
And so when they're viewed as weak, you get a lot of like, rah, like I'm gonna show you just so you don't forget. Okay, now I'm gonna go back into my meek.
But what?
Like a Dungeon Dragon?
But I guess what is it? Well, never mind. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Carrie. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't. What is being perceived as weak mean? Like, what is that?
Mm.
So like I've heard people say like, oh, turn the other cheek or like stuff like that. It's like that's no, like I'm not about to look like a punk. I'm not about to look weak. I'm not about to let XYZ happen to me. Like they'll allow it to, they're like, only I got 2 cheeks. That's it. Like I'm not, you only get 2.
We
It's
technically
not,
have
I'm not,
4.
well, technically
Yeah,
have 4, right? I
four
didn't want to
cheeks,
go there,
but it's fine.
Henrik.
It's fine.
I didn't want to
Go
go
ahead.
there. But it's like there's only so much that I'm gonna take before I buck back. Nuck if you buck, like you know what I'm saying. So it's like,
Okay.
Bishop in the house.
It
Yeah,
is
Lorraine
that.
be
All right.
Lorraine be trying. She be ready to set it off. You know?
Yeah.
She be ready.
Yeah, 9:22. Okay.
I'm not saying me personally.
Of course
It's
not.
just I know at
Yeah, yeah.
times people view.
Asking for a friend, yeah.
Well, I've had people. Okay, so for example, I've had situations personally. Let me use me then. I've had situations personally where my default is to think, process, step back, hold my peace. You know, that's my default. So to those looking onward, I would get the, oh, Lorraine is just so nice. Cause let me tell you, because if it was me, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so,
Very
and I've had
rarely
others,
does that ever happen. If it was
I've
me,
had
never
others
shows up.
say, I had others say, like, you can't let people do XYZ because you're telling them how to treat you. Because the more you allow certain things, the more people will do it to you. And so, like, I've had like one example where I was working at this particular job and I don't do very well with people raising their voices at me. And so I know where it comes from, but that's beside the story. So I don't do well with people raising their voices at me. And so I was in the workplace setting and we had just had a meeting like maybe like a week or so before about having respect for each other and how we communicate and blah, blah, blah. And then the manager, like 2 weeks later, like starts screaming and yelling and then turned to me and like started directing it at me. And like inside, I wanted to respond. But it was like, okay, but is that Christ-like? Like I was going through like that and my heart was racing and my started sweating and I started feeling hot. And I literally just stood there and cried. But it wasn't so much, even when I walked out of the room, my thought process was they may have perceived my tears as weakness, but it was because I was so upset and I could not respond. Like it wasn't that they hurt my feelings. It's just I wanted to respond and I could not respond. And so to them on the outside, it was like, man, she's weak because it wouldn't have been me. Like nobody was gonna do that to me, and and it's just situations like that. I mean, that's just one minor example.
That's actually a good one.
Just the taking on the things that people do to you. Like I said, don't be wearing doing well. Like you do things, you're meek, you're humble, you're doing all these different things, and you're getting like beat on. Sometimes literally, but most times figuratively. And you're taking it, and people are like, yeah, they're gonna take it. They're gonna keep taking it because they're weak. And some people don't like that perception of themselves because it's like, I'm not weak. I'm doing this because this is how God's asked me to move in this situation or in that situation. But over time, it's like it compounds, right? So you might like, whatever. You could think I'm weak or whatever. But after a while, it's like, all right, no, we're not doing this. Like, I'm going to show you. So I guess that's where my questioning is coming from.
No, I think that's a good example.
If there's an example I want to give with somebody I currently report to, and he was sharing an example of where he worked before, and there's this major project they had to hand over, and he's a pretty much ones and zeros, very direct, process oriented guy, right? And he's just like, okay, this and this are the gaps. If we don't do this and this is likely to be outcome, blah blah blah. His boss at the time thought that he was being like a naysayer, right? And publicly kind of like embarrasses him and moves him off the project. Sure enough, exactly what he said would happen happened, right? But he doesn't make any scene about it. And the boss Nobody comes at him because the boss already made it publicly known he's off the project. So the chairman of the board, everybody know, well, it ain't his fault. It's actually the boss's fault, right? But he garners a lot of respect throughout the organization because people are like, how he handled it, and he didn't make a scene, all of these things, and now he was proven right. And he didn't get cocky about being proven right and go around like, see, I told you, whatever, right? He moves on from the organization. His boss ends up getting fired. And then his boss comes to an interview in the organization where he's now working and he's the boss.
Wow.
He turns around, he hires his boss. And
Of course.
his former
100%.
boss. And his
Spot.
former boss and him are now the best of friends. And the former boss is also now a Christian and says that was a defining moment for him because in all of his experiences, he'd heard a lot of people talk about being Christ-like. But he said in that moment, he actually saw it in someone. And he said, you know what? If this God you're talking about, this Christ you're talking about, can give you the wisdom to do those things in a moment without you even knowing how the situation will pan out, you trust this God, it pans out the way it does, you're humble enough to hire me, give me a second chance, all these things, that relationship must be real, that God must be real. And it when you were talking, I think, Lauren, you said it, or was it you, Courtney, about being a lighthouse, right?
Yeah.
A lighthouse doesn't have neon signs pointing to it like, look at me, I'm the greatest lighthouse ever, I got 1,800 lumens, none of that. But the lighthouse is sitting there doing what it needs to do well and saving lives, because without that light going around, everybody crashes on the shore, right? So it's not about, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, but it's being confident enough to stand there in rain, sleet, snow, whatever, bad weather, and keep that light going, right? And then who knows what outcome might, who knows, Lauren, that interaction you had, what that would do. Is it Bishop who always says, sometimes it's not about you, right? So the other people who might have been around and noticed your response, what that might do for them down the road, who knows?
Wow.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I see here. Is one, who's defining weak and who's defining strength? And two, then there's also cultural context. I was talking to Din, my brother-in-law, and he was saying when he was in school, he had to learn to fight because if you didn't, kids would pick on you every day, right? So it was something that you had to do because of the cultural context.
Right.
And then there's so there's multiple layers of ideas that your question touches. So there's the idea of cultural context. There's the idea of faithfulness, right? And what is faithful in that moment? And then there's the definition of strength. There are some places where people wrongly describe strength to aggrandizing and puffing up your chest, when true strength may be restraining yourself in the moment. I will give an example of that being, maybe Will Smith and Chris Rock. Was Chris Rock weak or strong? Depends on who's asking. Was Will Smith weak or strong? Depends on who's asking, right? Or who's looking. Because you had some women who were saying they want a man to show up like that for them.
Right.
They're going to protect them and whatnot. And you have some women who are saying he's a fool. He just jeopardized our whole life, all our future earnings and whatnot. I don't want a man whose display of strength is going to be so foolhardy, right? And that depends on a whole number of things. I guess it then comes back to your initial question. Are you using God's definition of strength and weakness? And are you being faithful to that in your given situation? And what is faithful for your situation? Because there may be an instance where, using any one of your illustration or Jerry's, where in the moment you take it and you cry, but then you're faithful to go have the conversation afterwards to say that this was not. You have the strength to go and address it. Because some people, they don't have the strength. They're too weak to deal with the conflict. And the weakness isn't isn't just in letting people walk over them, but in addressing conflict.
The timidness.
And
Fronting
so,
it right up. Mhm.
and so it's, to me, I don't know that there's a singular answer, because there's so many things happening in that question that would contribute to what it looks like.
And you're right. I mean, to your point, you look at Christ at, as he's going through the trial and the crucifixion, and he had all the power he needed to do whatever he needed to do. There are a lot of people that, I think people would not say it now, given the context, but in that time, you know, you're being spat on, you're being beaten, you're being humiliated, like all that. That and you have the ability to do something different.
To rain,
And they're literally,
brimstone.
Yeah.
And they're literally calling him weak. Like, get off the cross, save yourself. And it's like, he ain't gonna do it.
Yeah, but
however, it was a true show of strength in order to follow and stick to the script. It was more important for him to take that and to deal with all of that for us and to stick to the script than to do what he could and had the ability to do.
For sure. How does my fault.
Oh, go ahead, Gordon. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it reminded me of my grandmother used to always remind me of this verse when we talk about, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. That was one of those things that she always told me. You know, it's, where does that fit in the lifestyle? Also, if you're talking about adhering and submitting yourself to the will of God, God says that has that right to deal out justice. He's like, let me take care of it. That was what I was taught. I think there were times when, all right, you might have to put hands on somebody because they trying to put hands on you. But for the most part, it's like, like in a situation like Lorraine talked about, and then Jerome's example was, I think that fits it perfectly. It's like, yo, don't even stress that. God took it and he changed the whole situation around and it actually worked out in another way. But sometimes you just gotta let, like, all right, you got it, and God will take care of it.
I think and conversely, I think there's sometimes where you do need to speak up, right? And
For sure.
you may need to set the record straight and let people know this is not the way it's going to go down. I think once again, I think I think that's why the Holy Spirit, and having that is so important, because he will direct you into where he needs you to be for that particular time and for that particular circumstance, because you never know, because it's not it's not about necessarily, it may not necessarily be about you. You speaking up may save it for the person next to you. True. Right? And make sure that everything is aired out. I think it cuts both ways.
So, one key idea in what you said is to keep the word vengeance. Yeah. What does that mean? What is the Lord's? Because I'm not sure that just responding is vengeance.
Oh, no. I don't think about it that way either. I think it's like you're trying to repay. He said, that's why God said he will repay it.
So the English definition has punishment. It's not even just justice. It's punishment.
Mm-hmm. Which is what we generally have in mind, right?
Punishment inflicted in retaliation for an injury or offense. So that's akin to should I be able to spank my brother, my literal brother, my younger brother, for doing something to me, or is that daddy's job?
I like that.
Depends.
No. Do I let my brother push me around? No. Should I stand up for my sense against my brother? Yes. Should I even say, yo, what you're doing, I don't like that. please stop, right? Or I'm gonna tell daddy or whatever. But am I entitled, authorized to punish him
Probably not.
for what he did?
Punish him I mean, I can't instill a punishment as far as like go to the corner, go to your room, but
Right.
But you
he
can
can
open
get
a can of
he can
whooping
get
whoop
these
for him.
hands.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
But
no,
are you authorized to do that? Like what the mommy and daddy say when they come home and find out that you gave these hands? Well
I
done,
mean, you're gonna
Kenneth.
get in trouble. Yeah, you're gonna get in trouble.
so,
It's
Yeah.
happened to
well
me.
done,
I'm
done,
gonna
but
tell
same thing,
y'all what
Kenneth.
happened.
sometimes you
It
get,
was
but
problems.
sometimes it's a
You caught those hands too, huh?
so
I mean,
sometimes
but yo, hey,
it's a get in trouble that is like they have to do it, but inside they're just like they have to do it, right?
right.
But they're
But
inside
it's
they're
like,
just
well
like,
done. Well
yeah,
done,
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Understand, like
so
we
they
have to
call you
do
in
it.
the room and say you need to cry. Come out here, you're crying.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, listen,
Yeah, here's this onion. Here's this onion.
I,
Put it under your eyes.
we're really proud of you. Thank you. We were
Right.
worried about you, but listen,
Yeah.
we
But
gotta maintain
even
order.
even that, what are they saying by having to go through the show of calling you in the room?
We gotta maintain order.
Mm,
Can't be
okay.
throwing hands,
But
even
I
even
though
like
so,
even though that Bama deserved it.
I like
but
the
does
idea of
he?
us being dangerous to some degree, but we keep that under control. Because I mean, like, if you think about it, Jesus was a pretty dangerous dude. He just generally kept it undercover. It's I know we keep saying, there was the one time in the temple where he threw tables over. He didn't just throw tables over. Some people got some, yeah,
Yeah, some licks.
yeah.
He
So
threw blows.
So
Then he had a whip. What was
he
he
had a whip.
whipping? He was
he
whipping.
was whipping. He
First of
wasn't
all,
just whipping tables,
perfect. He was perfect in all things. If he was
right?
whatever he was hitting, he was gonna hit.
Sometimes you will get a
So
perfect
number
whoop,
one, he
right?
wasn't gonna miss what he was. You think he was hitting people?
Tell you something, Henry.
I
Let me tell you
suspect.
something.
No.
This same loving Jesus,
The same Jesus.
the same loving Jesus is the one who is one with the guy who said, "Kill all of them and don't
Man,
spare
woman, child,
man, woman,
dog,
and child."
everything.
I
Yeah.
I get it. No, 100%. I just he wasn't hitting people in the temple
Um,
with a whip.
Where is it?
Oh no, we have
No.
to look it up though.
He said, "Let's not look." Kenneth said, "No, we don't want to see."
Yeah, let's look it up.
all I'm saying is, I think he gives us a good example of I'm dangerous, I'm just restrained. And I think Lauren, you said it, Courtney, you probably said it too. I think that's what true strength is. It's not being a punk. It's knowing
Yeah.
that I can do this, but I will It's just like when you learn certain types of martial arts. The point of it, yes, you can defend yourself, but you need that mental discipline. Because if you open those hands up on someone, you can also kill them pretty quickly.
Hmm.
It's about, what, or it's just like if you have a licensed firearm, a concealed carry, you know you can kill people, but you're like, you know what? This guy is trash talking. I will go this way. I'm not gonna because if you engage everyone who engages you,
If you pull it out, you better
use those
use it.
hands or you use that firearm, then you seem like just as much of a chump, right?
True.
It's like
Okay.
you got no control, no impulse control. You just fly off the handle at the slightest thing, whatever the case is. So
Hmm.
But even like the vengeance though, like so sometimes he doesn't.
well,
Like,
hold on, and that's the
Well,
thing.
yeah.
John
I
chapter
think
Well,
I
2.
think this guy
Yeah.
I'm
was it
just
John C.
saying.
No, it
Maxwell?
was yet though.
No, I think it was John C. Maxwell. One of them had this thing is that, the same way there are people you might have wronged and you have suffered in your own ways and they will never know. Don't get it twisted and think that people who wrong you because you're not seeing it, you don't know what they're going through. And then sometimes you might hear, I'm not trying to put things on people, but you might hear 20 years down the line, um, they were paralyzed, they had a stroke. You don't know how life will turn out and what goes down. What I have seen though is it's like if you want God to intervene, you can't be getting in his way when he's trying to intervene. So God might be trying to deal with a situation. You're busy trying to throw blows, and he can't even get done the thing he wants to get done because you keep getting in the way and throwing jobs back at the person or whatever, right?
yeah, but every punishment we would deserve, we don't get. So
I
that's
hear
what I
you.
mean. Like,
But that doesn't
so-
mean that punishments don't abound, right?
But it doesn't mean that they do.
right. Well, because like everything that you've ever done to somebody, some of it gets covered. Some of it you get, but I think some of it you don't get. So even the vengeance is mine. Let's say they hurt me, they
He
might
chooses
not
how
get
to
the
dish it
vengeance
out.
for that
And,
thing.
Yeah, but he chooses.
whatever
Or they
they
may not
get
get
may
it
not
right
even be because
away.
of what they did to you.
Well, I mean, I understand the not right away, but I feel like sometimes they just don't get it. Like,
So let me say this. If the people in Nineveh didn't repent, they would have gotten their punishment. With God,
okay,
a lot of times the threat of punishment is meant to cause repentance.
Right.
And so the idea is not, I don't want to have to do this, but I want you to change.
Mm.
So when God told Abraham, your children will be enslaved for 400 years because the sin of the Amorites have not reached their full measure, he was applying grace to the Amorites. Right? And when they would not repent, he had to deal with them. Same thing with the children of Israel. If we follow their history, he would have, get them a little thing here and get them a little thing here. But then when he finally cast them out, it was because his intent has been the whole time he sent people to talk to them. He sent people to talk
for
to them
repentance.
over and over and over and over. And so, yes,
Well,
there's some people who won't get
Turn
it
around.
because they turned around. But if you don't turn around, you can expect it.
Yep. And I think sometimes even when you do turn around, there's still elements of it that will come back.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm still on sometimes.
I know you say sometimes, but again, you don't, man.
Sometimes. I think sometimes it's good.
Because sometimes it's not directly related to your situation. Like, because, like, okay, so if everyone holds on to vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. If everybody's holding on to the fact that the person that hurt them is going to get punished one day, it doesn't always happen.
It discounts mercy and grace.
Yeah,
What doesn't always happen?
He said he chooses who he wants to show mercy and who he gets to do that. He can be like, in this situation,
but you get to do that. You have that same discretion as a parent between your children.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it all depends on the circumstance and the child. Sometimes a child can learn their lesson just by being called out and spoken to, and you don't have to, And then there's another child. No, I have to give him a spanking because he have to. I don't have to do this with the other one. And so that's just God dealing with us as individuals. And
y'all never had no siblings or cousins like you like, man, they need to get spanked. Like
they begging for it.
And Lorraine's just like, you ain't spanked them? Like, she mad, like
Look, I'm gonna tell y'all a story after we're done.
I can't be salty. Don't be salty about that.
Oh,
but Kenrick, so Courtney looked for something different than I did, right? I went looking for Jesus flipping over the tables, and I found that story is in every gospel, right? Matthew tells the story, Mark tells the story, Luke tells the story. My Bible only had a reference to Matthew initially, to the Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So like the story in Matthew had a reference to Mark and Luke. Courtney then hits me with the John verse very early in John, like
second chapter, right?
And John, the only one who was actually, Mark wasn't there because he get the story afterwards. Luke wasn't there because he get the story afterwards, and Matthew didn't include it. He might have been there, but John was there for sure, right? John is the one. John chapter 2, starting at verse 13. He made the note, and he's the only one who makes the note about it says he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts.
Wove around his head like a.
You said where is this? Where is
John
this?
chapter 2.
You said he whipped around his head.
I don't know. That was Courtney.
Like a
I was
helicopter?
probably
Really?
thinking
That's
about
what,
Will
that's what you
Smith's
said?
daughter, you know. Probably was thinking about Willow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I
but
see.
Because I'm
hey,
sure I could just see, especially if people always saw Jesus as being like, docile, whatever.
right.
And he starts swinging this whip. I'm sure there are people gonna be like, he ain't seriously gonna hit nobody, is he? And they learned.
You know
Yeah.
what's also
He just hit
interesting?
somebody.
As you point that out, Jerry,
Mm.
we read the story about Jesus wept when he went to the tomb of Lazarus and think he was sad. One of these versions actually points out that he was angry,
Correct.
and it was anger why he was crying because the people were behaving like if
Correct.
Yeah, like he couldn't, like this
That'll
is,
do
it's
it.
so impossible, the situation is so lost, he couldn't possibly, do any, why is he,
Yeah,
because
I do
somebody
remember. I
actually told
think it
him
was.
that,
I think it was
why did
in.
you
I think it
bother
was
to
in
come or
John when
something
we
like
read
that,
that.
right?
Oh,
Mhm.
like he came late.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
in John when he said when it said that.
Yep. I think it was John.
'Cause I remember reading that. Yeah.
Look at us in John, right? Look at that.
John giving
Won't
all
he
the
do
tea.
it?
John's giving all the tea.
Oh my gosh! Now
Yeah.
you got that.
You got all the stories
North
stuck in your
Carolina.
stuck in your head.
No.
Yeah.
Just like a helicopter.
Yeah, somebody had to get touched with that. They ran.
Look, what are you doing?
John chapter 11. John chapter 11.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, John chapter 11, verse 13. 33, sorry. 33. John
Yeah, I was gonna
11,
say it's a little
33.
later.
33, yeah. 33 to 35.
32 gives context of who it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was happening? Because it was all the people were wailing and behaving badly. The New Living, the NIV says he was deeply moved
It says deeply moved,
and
that's
deeply
troubled.
troubled, deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Another version points out that he was angry. Let me see if I can pull it
Amplified
up.
says he chafed in spirit. Dang, chafed. Ugh. Chafed in spirit and sighed and was disturbed.
And I think the word they use for disturb there is disturb, like perplexed or frustrated, but to Jared's point, like, your spirit is troubled, you're angry,
I think
I think
NLT is
NLT probably.
is the one
I
who
think
actually
NLT
uses
says
the term
angry.
angry.
Yeah. Yep.
It says he groaned in the spirit.
Hmm.
Groaned in the King James. It says he groaned in the spirit. It says that is to have indignation, to sigh with a chagrin, specifically to sternly enjoin, to charge with earnest admonition, sternly to charge, threaten to enjoin. He groaned in the spirit. That's the groan.
Because he was annoyed. He had already told her, I'm the resurrection.
And was troubled. He was agitated. To stir or agitate to roil water.
Hopefully so.
To cause inward commotion. Take away his calmness of mind, disturb his equanimity.
He's clearly wet for me because I've done that.
So it wasn't sadness. Whoever it wasn't sadness.
No, he was disturbed. I think disturbed is probably like.
Yeah. So I wanted to follow up on a conversation that some people were having on Facebook. And I saw on a post from a guy who used to be on the couch with us for a while. He had asked the question, do you believe God doesn't give you more than you can bear? Why or why not? And while I read that, I was reading John. When I saw that, I was like that same day I was reading John chapter 19. And that was the verse I was talking about, Lauren, where Jesus's language to the pilot is that what's happening to me is someone else is doing. Like, you don't have this control over me. So it appeared that Jesus is saying this was assigned to me. But then we read today, as I've been reflecting on that, John 7, where the people went to grab him and they couldn't because his time was not. And it made me start to think about this question. I know people got into it and had, their own thoughts, but I was just curious as to your thoughts. I know we're at 10 to 10. And
can you define what you can bear for me?
It didn't kill you.
No, I guess that's my.
I
I also think about Job and, what
think he does.
you
I
think
think
he gives us more than we can bear?
Yes, more than we can bear in and of ourselves.
Right, by
And every
yourself.
time he does it stretches us. So it's like it stretches us, and the in our being stretched and calling upon him, in and through him we can. And then he's probably going to ratchet up the ante again, and in and through him we can again. But here's the blessing in it is that because we go through that process, we're then better able to help others. So it's like when you 23rd Psalm, he talks about our cup runneth over. In the original Hebrew, the concept is that our cup keeps stretching and increasing to take or receive more from him. And at the same time, he gives us wisdom to know who, when, where, and how to help others based on what we've received. Because if we don't apply wisdom to helping others, then we just end up being an enabler to them, right?
Mhm.
But in the simplest form, you can take all you can until you die.
Yeah, and I mean that's what
And
almost
then once you die,
right? No, but that's what almost
right,
happened with Job,
there's
and he
nothing
kept
more
death
you
from
can
happening.
bear.
Sorry?
I said, and then once you die, there's nothing more you can bear.
Well.
No?
Well,
So I was with you until I just thought of so sometimes people experience things that literally break them.
mhm.
So they're here living, but they're not here
Yeah,
anymore.
mentally they're gone.
And that's due to their experience. So I don't know. In that context, I don't know if that's necessarily something you were like, yeah, they bared it. They're not functioning.
The question is, I guess, okay, let's agree that does take place. I'm no debate, and there are people who's is it God who gave it?
It can be. He allows it.
Mm.
It can't happen without him allowing it. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of people.
And then let's actually like. So is he referencing 1 Corinthians 10:13?
He just asked a question and put it out there, and some people did. Some people in their responses did pull up
Okay.
that because that language comes from that verse.
Correct. That's why I was
The idea of more than you can bear comes from that verse.
correct, but it's not actually it's saying a temptation.
Temptation or trial, because that word temptation there is parasmos, and parasmos is temptation or trial depending on the context. The idea is proving either by enticement to sin or by affliction or adversity. So it's the same. We separate the two words, they use one word.
They
So
use one word.
would be
Okay.
temptation, and
For both
parasmos
of them.
would be trial.
So their language is simplistic. Okay, I got you.
Well, their idea on this is
It's simplistic.
one. In this instance, this idea is one.
Yes.
We've separated them for some reason, but they see it as one thing. Whether it be a temptation or a trial, they both doing the same thing, one word.
Okay. Got you.
Because either way, this situation, whether it was a temptation or trial, will prove your fidelity.
Correct. But if a temptation is much different than than a trial.
If so, let's think about it from Satan's perspective. I want you to not do what God wants you to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can either make your circumstance so unbearable that you
That you do it on your own.
that you don't do what God wants you to do, or I can lure you away by your desire so that you don't do what God wants you to do. Either way, all I was trying to do was get you to not do what God wants you to do.
Yeah, and I win either way, right?
Either way.
I prove
Same.
whether you're faithful or not, or we prove through whichever approach I take, we prove your faithfulness. And I would argue, if we separate them, then we miss the point.
Mm. Okay.
But that's a side note. Um, that's where the verse comes from. I would like to add another verse that some other people pulled up in alignment with, well, just to go alongside what Jerry proposed, and it's 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Courtney, you can read from verse 3. We're really only going to, the key verse here is verse 8 and 9 and 10.
I'm sorry, you said Second Timothy chapter 1,
2 Corinthians chapter
Second
1.
Corinthians chapter 1. Okay.
The key verses are 8 through 11, but I think 3 through 8 are important. So I would say let's read 3 through 11.
2 Corinthians chapter 1, 3 through 8,
3 through 11.
11. Okay. All right. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. If we are distressed, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which produces in you patient endurance of the same sufferings we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that just as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our comfort. We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We are under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we have despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we may not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope, and we will continue to deliver us. As you help us by your prayers, then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of many.
So there was a mouthful there, and a lot of things were said. What are your thoughts in light of our conversation?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Or is it no? He won't give us anything.
I'll read the question. Do you believe that God doesn't give you more than you can bear? Why or why not?
Yes. That's what. Yeah. Yes.
You believe he doesn't give you more than you can bear.
I believe you. He doesn't. Yeah. I believe he doesn't give you more than you can bear.
Why? What about this verse leads you to believe that?
Because what verse? What verse is it? It is 8.
We do not want you to
We
be.
were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, that we despaired in life itself. Right.
Uh-huh.
But 9 comes in and says, "Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God."
So as long as we have God, nothing we get, we can bear. We can't bear. Is what
Well,
you're saying.
yeah, and they gave context. Who
Well,
raises the
they
who raises the dead, right? So it was like, and it was like there's even
Even
I
if it
talk to
leads
my
to
kids
death.
all the time, like what's the worst, right?
Right.
And they're like death,
Yeah.
right? Because at that point, even though I think it's not the worst, but anyway, um, I think suffering is the worst. Kill me.
Agreed. 100%.
oh,
100%.
But who raises the dead, right? So it goes beyond and says, it's like this dude, not yeah, we've reached our end, um, but this dude can raise the dead, so it can't be, you know, he can take care of this.
Right. Right.
Because if it kills us,
Right.
he can bring us back.
The God we serve is able to deliver us.
Correct.
But if he doesn't, we still won't bow down.
Correct.
Right.
Because he can raise us up to suffer some more.
shit, yeah,
Nah.
No, that's not. No, that's
Nah.
not.
Oh,
Nah.
okay.
One
Nah.
person had commented about the children of Israel leaving Egypt, and God's comment that he's not taking them by the way of the Philistines, because if they encounter war, they going, they're not ready for that. So I'm gonna take them through the desert, so that because they're not prepared for that. Um, Suggesting that yes, he doesn't give us. There's another example of him not giving them more than he can bear. But I do like, Kenrick, where you have landed here, with beer by myself, probably. But if he is giving it to me, knowing that this resource is available to me.
Well, and it's a consistent theme that you see not only, you can take this, but you also look at what he constantly kept telling the disciples, right? It was, when he was feeding the 5,000, like, this is what you saw this is what you experienced, but look at this, right? We read that, on many occasions. Then you look at when we were in, what was it, Second Kings this week, where what was it, Shunammite woman? She was from Shunem. I don't know where.
Yeah.
But anyway, what about, she had bills to pay, debts to pay, and just pour oil and keep pouring that joint until you filled all the bottles you got, right? And then that joint stopped. Like, far beyond. Like, you can see this, right? And this is what, clearly it was desperate enough for her to go, right? And find somebody who can help her solve the problem, right? Um, so it was desperate, and she couldn't even understand what it was, right? But it was just, God constantly finds a way. If you're trusting in him and you put your faith in him, he shows you that what you see doesn't really matter. What you're currently experiencing isn't the limit, right? I've got more. And so, I mean, I think it's a consistent theme that he constantly puts out there.
I like, as you speak, I'm rereading this text, and I'm thinking how Paul perceived the situation. He said he acknowledged it was far beyond our ability to endure, but then said, this happened so that we won't rely on ourselves.
Correct.
okay. So so this verse doesn't fit in with the other ones for me, because they're telling you, they're expressing to you that they literally were at a point where they prepared to die, because they were like, this is too much, right? Beyond our ability to endure. I mean, that communicates beyond what they're
that's
able
relative.
to bear. Right. It's all relative. Our experiences are relative,
100%.
right? So had he not rescued them, let's say they died, would you have said that they bared, or would you have said
Yeah.
What would have been
They bared.
But that
He's
was the
gonna
point
have
that
wrote the
Kenrick
letter.
made, though.
They
That's the
bared.
point that Kenrick
They
made.
agreed.
He delivered us. But this happened so that we would not rely on ourselves, but God who raises the dead. So if
No.
if this
Right.
ends in death,
Right.
But he's also
I
talking
agree
about
with
it
all of
after.
that. But did they bear it? Is what I'm saying. Like, if
So-
they died, would you have said they bared it? Like,
Yes.
But he's talking about it after the fact, right? He's not talking about
right.
while
In
they
it.
were going through it. He's like, it's like after they went through the experience. Now he's like, man, we thought we were going to die. Like we thought we
Mhm.
were under that pressure.
Right.
But then now he's saying now it's like that's what I'm getting because I'm assuming he's writing after because he's just
Right.
like we
Right.
experienced, we were
That's-
under this great pressure.
Mhm.
But here we are now.
And
Right.
Lorraine. And the thing is this: like, the reality is, there's stories we have not heard because they bared and they died.
They died. Right.
Probably.
Right.
right. But
Right.
here's the idea.
But and
Yeah.
at the end, like, he wouldn't give him any more than that. You're just want me to put you.
But here's the thing that I think we may be on the wrong emphasis.
Okay.
Bearing is not making it out.
Correct.
Bearing is
Mhm.
despair,
Wow.
right?
Correct.
Bearing is what?
Bearing has to do with despairing. Because they were saying we were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to bear, so that we despaired life itself,
We thought we were gonna die.
right? But they were
It was the mental tax.
correct, and this is in contrast to Jesus,
Correct.
who went and spent this time in the garden before he went and faced his thing, so that he was able to hold up. Now, he was beaten so badly that he did die, but he didn't despair in it. It didn't. Now he did get to the, my God, why have you forsaken me? But if you read what that actual chapter is that he was quoting, that's not a despairing chapter. If you go back to Psalm 22 and read it, that's not a statement of despair.
So okay. If I'm gonna go along with that, so when you feel like you're not bearing, it's because you're not relying. Is that what I'm hearing?
I didn't say.
When
I,
you
oh, let me-
feel like you're not bearing.
Like it's beyond your bearing, does that mean you're not relying?
Here's what I will say in response to that. People's thresholds are different. And
Right.
I believe that in any circumstance, there is going to be a period of hopelessness and those feelings of being
Despair.
fully overwhelmed. So those are natural.
Mhm.
But if you sit in that and you see it, David has a psalm that starts that way, but then he transitions his thought process. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's Psalm 37, but don't quote me there.
And this verse says that, right? Because they go ahead and say we despaired, right?
Right.
That was their experience,
Right.
but then it doesn't stop.
Right. God rescued them.
Not that God rescued them.
He said he did rescue us from mortal danger, and he will rescue us again.
No, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but God. So he realized during that process, not at the end.
No,
of
I'm
it,
with you. I'm with
but
you
during,
there.
during the process that this was like they realized like, oh, this ain't necessarily something that will kill it. Like we need to rely on him, and God can take care of us. And then and who knows? Maybe it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And the fact that they relied on that and said, even if it does kill us, we won't despair. I don't know.
And I could see that. On him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us. So it's like he delivered us, he will deliver us again, and we have faith that he will continue to deliver us. Um, like you said, it might be that last time that he didn't, and
At
they,
some point, yeah. Sometimes
you
they
know,
get delivered.
all right, yeah.
Yeah.
I,
But they had they
yeah.
held on to the hope through the whole time, like the whole time, right?
Until they
Like,
went to sleep. Go to sleep.
yeah,
And you hear about that with the Christians who were persecuted by Nero. When the lions were eating them, they were singing hymns and stuff.
Yep.
But let's say you're not singing him. Let's say let's say you're crying. You're
You could be
crying.
crying.
I
I'm
will, I
sure.
will, I will add this
You
verse.
know, that's why he
People that were
started
singing
burning them
hymns got
alive,
called
right?
out.
Because
People
even
that were
when they were
crying didn't get
being
called out.
eaten by snakes and not by snakes, by lions and so on, and they'd have a smile on their face. He's like, I don't even want to see them anymore, so just burn them alive. But then they'd be singing hymns, so it's like he couldn't win.
Right, but let's
And
say
there were some
that
that
is,
were crying, Lorraine.
Of course,
but
of course.
let's say that's not your experience. You're
Was
not
it Paul who they
saying
boiled in oil alive, but he was like swimming in it, and he's like, "Come on, guys, you can do better." And
he
then they
said
just got fed
swimming
up
in
and
it.
put him on. Was it Paul
Oh, that's
or
John,
John?
So
John, yeah.
the
They just got
Revelator.
fed
Lorraine,
up and stuck
do
him
you
on an island, right?
understand? Do you understand what
Hmm.
the theme is?
huh?
Those who cried, no stories.
No
Those who
stories.
sang, those who smiled, like those
Yeah,
they
you were
get
a chump.
stories.
If you were a chump, you got no glory.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh man.
But I guess I don't know.
Cubic
I'm still on the
zirconia.
side I was already on.
No jewels.
Yeah, I agree um that he's able to rescue us. I agree that we should focus on him. I do think that you can experience something so despairing and so dark that
Breaks
you
you.
cannot that you cannot bear it,
How
right?
about this, Lauren?
And you're saying bear it and stay alive.
Well, either you could
Yes,
you
I agree
literally
with
give you like literally like you're going through it, you're like, I can't do it anymore, I give up, and you die,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. No question. That's what
That
they
is, I don't think that,
but that fulfills what
I
he
guess
said.
even in me saying that God gives us more than we ourselves can bear is not making, I'm not, it's not, it doesn't equal to me painting God in a bad light or anything like that. But I do think we go through things that take us literally, some people literally to the end.
Yeah. I think that's what he's saying.
What do you do, Lauren, with Isaiah 26:3? And then I think the other one that I'd like to ask you about is um, Philippians 4 through 6. What do you do with those two verses?
So what's perfect peace?
What's kept in perfect peace?
You. So what is perfect
No,
peace?
not you.
You will keep in perfect all who trust in you and whose thoughts are fixed on you.
Yeah,
So what is
it's
perfect peace?
it's it's your mind, right? So let's add on another verse. Philippians 4 through 6. 4 through 7.
Because I know that one in the previous one, Jared, in the Old Testament reads, "You will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you." So to your point,
Correct.
there is mind that is kept. So your body might be going through turmoil, your circumstances may be turmoil, but and I think we've all experienced that where we're in a crazy situation, but we feel strangely calm.
And
And
here's
and
what it
and
says.
and, and
And that
peace
calmness is
and,
what
and
allows you
peace
to bear the
His
madness.
mind
Right?
is stayed because he trusts, which is what Paul is talking about, this
Right. And
reliance,
Yep.
right?
and you can
My
never
reliance on God is going to give me peace in this circumstance.
and you can't have peace without trial tribulation. Like you can't experience, you don't understand what peace is without the
Yep.
disturbance, the problems, the the trial.
Yeah.
Without the trial, you can never know what peace is.
Yeah, because then everything just seems like ease, right?
Correct.
And it really is a hell of an experience. Well, not a hell of an experience, but it really is an experience where, everything around you is telling you should go crazy, but you're not.
Let's add on Philippians 4. What do you do with this verse? Philippians 4, 4 through, let's go all the way to 9, just so we stay in context.
Okay. 4 through 9.
Mm-hmm.
Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you.
My emphasis here is 6 through 7. Well, 4 through 7. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I'll say it. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer, and one version says supplication, this one says petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which we read about in Isaiah 26:3, which transcends all understanding. And I think that's key here. Peace that don't make sense.
Yep.
Will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. What do you do
Okay,
with that?
so it could be beyond your physical ability to bear it, but you're mentally able to tolerate it. Is that what we're saying?
I'm saying Jesus was whipped and beaten and killed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But God could raise the dead, and Jesus came back.
Right. So you hold on to that hope that this thing's about to kill me. I will wake up again.
And so my ability to bear is not
100%.
of my ability to survive it physically.
Right.
I like that. That's my takeaway.
That's
Thank
what
you,
I
sir.
was asking. Right.
Bearing is now mental.
Okay, that's okay. So if I am in whatever situation that I feel has taken me to my limit, right? And I say to God, I'm tired. I'm ready. I'm done. And I die. That was me at my line, not able to handle anymore.
Maybe, maybe not. Depends on
And-
what else was accompanying that thought, right?
Right.
And here's why. There's a story that we read since we last been, the story of Asa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Faithful king,
Mm-hmm.
who the Ethiopians was attacking him, and he said, I don't know what to do here. God, you have to help me. And God saved him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he didn't have any options of his own.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Right.
relied on God. God rescued him. The next thing that happened, he decided he wasn't going to ask God. He had enough power and means now. Now he had money. He going and pay somebody to help him. And he get called out for that. Then God decided, I want to help you remember how to rely on me. So God gave him a foot disease. You know what Asa did? He called all the doctors that he could and never once pray and ask God.
Mm-hmm.
He never talked to God. He did not rely on God. He trusted in everything
Right.
else.
Everything else.
but
Right.
God.
Mm-hmm.
Paul is saying in what we read in 1 Corinthians,
Mm-hmm.
this thing that led us to this despair, right, happened so that we would learn to rely on God.
Okay. I'm with you
Because
there.
once I can rely on him,
I'm
gonna get to this place of peace. Because it's the same guy who said that is saying this is how you get to this peace that transcends understanding.
right.
Isaiah is saying the same thing. He'll keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on him
Right.
because
Right.
he trusts in him. That is a
I'm with you.
transcending understanding, transcending. So
Mm-hmm.
if I collapse, and I'm not saying stumble, right? Because people are going to stumble.
Right.
We're going to start relying on ourselves first. We're going to go through all emotions. We're definitely going to cry because it's going to be hard. We're going to feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if it breaks us, these verses suggest, and I'm not saying that this is true or false,
Mm-hmm.
but these verses have a kind of absolute nature to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost promises of God, so to speak. And we can either take God at his word or say that
Mm-hmm.
it's not true. But if we take these words to be true, these words suggest that people who truly trust him
Don't break.
They don't break completely. I wouldn't say they don't break. I would say that even those who trust God completely can have moments of breaking.
I
Well,
want to ask.
these guys clearly there was a breaking, right? Because they showed that. I mean, they thought they were going to die to the
Correct.
point. I mean, there was a breaking, right? Is to Jared's earlier point, they didn't stay there.
You know,
And they
there's a
realized.
text
Go ahead.
where Jesus says, "Those who fall on him will be broken, but those who he falls on will be crushed." And I think maybe I like that idea where it's things might break you, but you won't be like utterly destroyed. You won't
Utterly.
be crushed. You won't be eviscerated, right? You might be broken. I mean, that's like when he even talks about, you might enter heaven lame or missing a limb, whatever, but it's like you're still there, you're not utterly, you know.
Hmm.
But you may die.
Yeah,
It's okay.
like John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. It's okay. It's 10. It's 10:24.
No. Keep searching. Find one.
It's
Find one.
10:24.
No, I don't think we should let up here.
So if you are not having a kumbaya mental experience during your breaking and your deepest, darkest experiences, based on the verses that you're using, that means I'm not.
I don't know if it's a kumbaya. Yeah, I don't know about
I would
kumbaya.
not do that. I would not.
Okay, so what is the peace? That's why I kept asking. What is this perfect peace?
It's not a moment. It's a process and a destination of sorts. And I'm gonna say it like this: Jesus, when he went to the garden, was breaking. He was breaking, because he had a physical stress condition.
Mm-hmm.
The blood on the sweats of blood was a level of stress.
Mm-hmm.
What he did was he continued in that trusting till he got to the point.
Until he got out of it.
Correct. So it's not that you won't ever have that point.
Okay.
Because clearly Jesus did.
Okay. Okay.
Which is why I said the people will have the moments of breaking, but they won't be broken.
Correct.
Or crushed in Jerry's language. I like that idea better. Because they persist in trusting him, and eventually they get to the destination of peace. And I'm not saying that they don't have to cycle through that a few times. Right? I don't think it's necessarily I get here and I never have to worry about this again.
Yeah, you have to level up.
I think I may have to go through that whole process and work through it again, maybe at another point. And maybe that happens less and less and less as I learn to trust God.
It's interesting though, Jared, that's, and I'm glad you didn't let up on that topic. But if you think about it, what the devil really uses to keep us from progressing is the fear that, if you face this thing, it could break you. And it's like that fear about being broken is what really keeps us from making big faith moves or any number of things, right? And once we get in the habit of trusting God and dealing with that stress, then literally it's like, well, what can stop you? What can separate you?
So then the beyond what you can bear is what should reference your mental state. Is that what
It
I'm hearing?
does reference your
Yes.
mental state.
Does. Okay. Okay.
I would say it does reference your mental state.
Yeah, because I think in general, your mind's the last thing to go,
Yep.
right? Once you lose will.
And you
It's
see,
over.
I
That's how people self-delete, right?
Yeah.
and then there are people like Jerry's sister, right, who suffering through, um, chronic illnesses and dealing with all kinds of difficult circumstances that beat them down, and they have real dark, bad days. But then they come to be some of the when they get into those spaces where they, I'm trusting God in this, they become these lights and beacons for hope and encouragement and strength, because we talked about that.
Right.
That does not minimize the suffering that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
But they come to this, and it's not every day. Some days are better than others, but they get to this place of, I trust you, God, and this hurts. I'm in pain and I'm fed up of this, but I trust you, and there's a peace in that.
Okay. So, in esteeming others above ourselves, what is our responsibility to other people when they're in those spaces?
What do you mean?
So, like your fellow brother, sister is going through their beyond they can bear window phase experience. Um, how should we respond to them when they come to you and they're like you said, it's a window, it's a space you're in that God willing you transition from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while they're in that space, what is our responsibility? Because we're supposed to bear each other's burdens. What responsibility, if any, should we have for that person while they're in that window?
I don't know that there's one answer to that, because each circumstance is different. And Kenrick used to talk about all the time, kick them in the balls. There's some people you kick in the balls. There's some people you,
Dude,
you leave alone.
we saw a verse. I can't
There's
remember where
some
it
there's some
was.
people you leave alone. There's some people who, where it's not, God will tell you nothing. Don't say anything. Just sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's any one answer. I think there's a general theme, a general framework that we can speak to, but I don't know that there's any specific answer. And I think that answer sits in trusting God and believing His word. And they have to get to that on their own.
Right.
and you can support and facilitate that, I wouldn't necessarily start to talk on God's behalf like Job's friends.
Friends, yep.
But the best, I heard Pastor Wright say, I don't know what God is doing, but trust Him. I can't speak for him, but child, trust Him. That's where Wright ended up, and I'm borrowing from that.
Right.
What
I kind of I said here, these verses say this. Do you believe it? And I'm not saying that God is promising to deliver you from this, because here's the thing about Job. When Job encountered God, and God does not deliver him from his affliction, God says, actually, God chastises him, right? He gets to the place where, okay, I see this God, I know this God, and got to that place of peace. And he did not have an expectation that his situation was going to change. Now, God did change his situation, but when he got to that place of peace, after the chastising, God didn't come and, Usa, okay, baby, it's all right, I got you. God called him out for his distrust and for all his antics and all his wailing and crying like a crybaby. God called him out for it. And he got to that place of peace, not expecting his situation to change. It did. But if it didn't, what do you think Job's story would have been after that encounter with God? And he had to have that encounter with God by himself. One of the things we see with Paul is that this happened so that we would learn to rely on God. The question is the person who's in that situation learning to rely on God? And we can't judge that, and we should not be judging that. But we could contribute to their reflecting on that. So I would say there's a framework of trusting God, but exactly what that looks like is going to vary from situation to situation, person to person. That's what I would propose or suggest.
Yeah.
And I think even in those situations, it takes us back to relying on God to know what to do in the given situation. Right? Because there are times when, somebody might be suffering grief, whatever the case is, and all you can do is just be there for them to cry on your shoulder, or just be there for them to talk. You don't have to go quote every scripture about death and dying for them. And the promise of the earth made new and all that. Sometimes it's just sit there and listen.
So I think that I saw a similar discussion, and one of the things a person highlighted, which I agree, is sometimes we minimize what other people are experiencing, and that in turn, not in all cases, but in some cases, like, you isolate that person, and you can make them feel like something is wrong with them for feeling what they're feeling and going through what they're going through. So that's why I was asking, what is our responsibility as we esteem them above ourselves? What that would look like. Because sometimes we could just, I don't know. So I'm gonna keep it 100. Like, sometimes we quote verses and it's like, but are you hearing what the person's telling you? Like, are you, like, yes, the verse says what it says. There's no negating what it says. But are you also hearing what the person is experiencing? Are you sitting in that with them while they're hurting? That might not be the time to be like, You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. That's just my
No,
point.
you're right. That's when I tend to shut up at that point because I'm too logical.
And I will say this about Jesus.
I call Jules.
Jesus tried to bring his friends along for the ride and tried to get the encouragement of his friends, and his friends fell asleep. Not only did they fall asleep, but when the moment came, it actually came. And preparing for the moment, he had to prepare by himself. Jesus. He didn't have no friends to help him. And then when the moment came, his friends ran away. The people he was pouring into, the people he was supporting, people he came to.
Well, a couple of them pulled swords.
And then ran away.
Because he held the dude's ear right there. He was like, we ain't using this.
They tried for a moment. Yes. They showed up for a second.
Yeah.
They thought they could hang.
Yes.
And they couldn't.
And then the one who said, I'm gonna go to bat for you. I got you. I'm in this corner. Was like, oh, I don't even know the man.
No, I don't know the man.
I don't know the.
Sorry for that, man. I don't know the man.
So my point is sometimes these are journeys we have to take by ourselves.
Right. I do agree.
And there's nothing that anybody can do, even the most well-meaning person. There's you and God. And what we see with Jesus was his determination to rely on God.
Regardless.
I think Hebrews 4, Hebrews 6, I think it's Hebrews 6:12, speaks to a certain kind of posture that I don't think many of us have, that we see so clearly in our example, Jesus. Let me see if I can find it. Hebrews, I think it's 6. No, it's not Hebrews 6. I'm going to Google it then. It is Hebrews 12:4. See, I was close. I had my numbers mixed up. Hebrews 12:4. It goes, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. One of the things we see about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is that he resisted. And he was that committed. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm not saying this to minimize the distress that anybody was feeling, because it was clear that Jesus himself was distressed. He was distressed. And it was a physical distressing that was mental as well. But he was committed and came out on the other side peace-wise. He validated Isaiah 26:3 and Philippians 4 through his example. But that doesn't lessen the process and the journey and minimize it any, or make it easy at all, or doesn't suggest that it is an easy process to do that, because it wasn't easy for him, and he had to really, really want it. He had to keep his mind fixed. And even with his mind fixed, it was hard. I think there's another idea in Revelation in the Jesus speaking to the churches, you know, I think it's Revelation chapter 2. Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as a victor's crown. To the one who is victorious, to the one who makes it to the end. There's a call from God to that level of commitment. And I think not all of us rely with that that kind of perseverance.
Facts.
And according to what the word is saying, if we believe the word, should we rely with that kind of perseverance, we will get to that destination. But many of us finish before. And I guess it speaks to some degree to our trust. How much we really trust. It is approving.
Well, I mean,
It's truly
they
approving.
had to go through the proving, right?
Yeah.
And they tell you that's why they, you know, we had to experience this so that we, you know, and look at where, you know, look at where they are, you know, as we would see them in their relationship, right, with God. Look at what they're doing, and even in that, they still had to go through the proving.
But it's not overnight. It don't happen in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You know. And Jesus was only able to do it in one night because he had a habit. He was in shape. Most of us out of shape.
I am.
All right. But it's 10:43.
But out of shape means that you at some point were in shape.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I never developed. Maybe I went from the scrawny kid who didn't have any muscles to the fat kid who was always out of shape. Maybe I was perpetually out of shape.
Yeah.
Maybe I never got into shape. I want to suggest as we close to read Psalm 22 and then close out.
Oh Lord.
You got us with the beatbox.
Because this is what Jesus was quoting on the cross in the height and the midst of his despair. This is what he called to mind. When you read the first verse, you go, oh, and you just stop at the first verse, you think he was despairing. But was he? Or was he encouraging himself? Courtney, go ahead. It's a long chapter, but I think once we're done, we can.
You got this, Courtney. You got this. You got this.
All right, that's my takeaway.
Don't disturb.
Just a week.
All right, Kenrick. This is to the tune of the dough of the morning.
Oh,
This dude's Diddy. He's taking other people's.
All right. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In our ancestors put their trust, they trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Yet you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you, even at my mother's breast. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax, it has melted within me. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of earth. Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you
Pause, pause,
descendants.
go back.
Yep. Yep.
Notice the transition between 21 and 22.
Hmm.
Notice what David does between here. Go ahead and try it again and do it again, Courtney. 21 and 22.
All right. Rescue me from the mouth of lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly, I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All the descendants of Jacob honor him. Revere him, all you descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. From you comes the theme of my praise in the great assembly. Before those who fear you, I will fulfill my vows. The poor will eat and be satisfied. Those who seek the Lord will praise him. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. All of the rich of the earth will feast and worship. All who go down to the dust will kneel before him. Those who cannot keep themselves alive. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord. They will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it.
Yeah. He lamented and then he shifted to a mindset of praise by acknowledging who God has been, even though his situation did not change. And you can tell by going down that pathway, um, his whole posture changed. And you can see it in the language. You could see him going, rejoice in the Lord. And again, I say rejoice. Be anxious for nothing, but in every situation, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, present your requests. And he did that 100%, present his request before God. And the peace of God that transcends understanding, don't make sense with the circumstance, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And he will keep in perfect peace whose minds are stayed on him because they trust in him. It's a matter of, do I believe that or not? Have I done that or not? Am I doing that or not? That's what Jesus called on in his moment. If he's my example, I'll add on one more verse. It's a short one. I think it's 1 Corinthians 10:13. But no temptation has, no parasmos has overtaken you except what is common to man.
Mhm.
So as despairing as your situation is, it's
Nothing new.
it's not unique. It's common to man. And your savior, your Messiah is in all points parasmos as you were. Yeah. And leave those thoughts. Takeaways, reflections. I think we do that differently. Reflections on that idea and takeaways. Either or both, and taking them. And I want to say first, thank you, Lauren, for making us linger here for a little bit.
Facts.
Facts on facts on facts on facts.
All right, Courtney, I'm going to let you go first. Reflections and or takeaways.
I don't know. I think it was just interesting to really go down the path of really understanding a little bit better humility. I think there's always this for me in the study understanding the word usage. I'm always come to the Bible with my English understanding, my English definitions, and then it's like, yeah, this is not really the same. It's like I really have to even simple things, something that you would think, oh, I know what that word, yeah, I know that, I know what that's saying, and then it's like, not really. It's not exactly the thoughts of the writer, maybe the way that I would interpret it at first. So that's how I'm really looking at a lot of the different things that we talked about. It's always and it could be the difference of just a word, just one word near like that. I'm pretty sure like that. I understand that, and it's like it just changes the whole passage. Like, oh,
Word. Word. How about you, Jerry?
When you said bearing does not equate to surviving, that is wow. I think sometimes even when we face difficult situations, we get so caught up in how am I going to survive? How am I going to come out the other side? How am I that it actually robs you of peace? And if you take it one day at a time and you're trusting God that this can end however it can end, but I'll be all right as long as I'm trusting in Him, then it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
and He's fully well able, and if He doesn't, yeah.
Lauren?
Um, so the top half of our talk, I wrote down be strong enough to be weak.
Mm.
I
And
want that
weak.
as a T-shirt.
Add that to the
I'm
T-shirt.
adding that to the T-shirt list.
You're strong enough to be weak.
Weak
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just remembering some of the other T-shirts. Oh my God.
As a result of primordial ooze, drop draws, you're important but not that important. Don't get married to the how. G's up, how's down. Don't be salty. Get naked with Jesus. Be naked for Jesus. Lordship answers everything and be strong enough to be weak.
Because based on how we ended on like meekness and humility, it's like just keep looking at the Father, like regardless of naysayers or what you're being told or what culture is telling you. It may not be somebody directly telling you, but you get these messages several different ways. And just remembering, don't lean on your own understanding. Is what I wrote. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. the bottom half of this discussion, no, so I would consider myself to be an empath. And so when other people hurt, I hurt. And so, dang it, Lorraine. Ugh. I don't know, like I have like flashes of people that I know. Woo, are like enduring a lot. And so like even that conversation when it came up, I don't know if it came from like your original conversation that you mentioned, but even the part of it that I saw, I remember like writing about it, and I was like, this road is not easy. Sometimes it just sucks. This is literally what I wrote. This road is not easy. Sometimes it just sucks here. I was like, but Jesus has overcome the world. I put angry, frustrated, tired, but hopeful. And I put holding on to my mustard seed.
Amen.
Because sometimes that's all I have. Like in those spaces, like it's about near invisible, but I can still like I see it and I hold on to it.
I can feel it in my shoe.
Look, just like okay, you still here, like but yeah, it's just this world, man, like the stories, the things we see, it's like it's not a nice place, man. It's not a nice place. And it just yeah. And you see the pain and the stuff people are going through. And some stuff you don't see because a lot of us are very good at smiling and hiding it and covering it up. And then you hear, oh, such and such happened to this person. And it's like, yeah, but they were so. It's like, you have no idea the darkness that they were sitting in. Like, yeah. So that's my thought. Those are my.
I receive it. Karen?
I do not rely on God enough, and I'm fearful of what happens next.
Mm-hmm. You are not alone.
And so, yeah. No one wants to learn hard lessons. No one wants to learn that lesson the hard way. But you gonna learn today.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
Oh gosh.
So, maybe that's my takeaway. You're gonna learn today. Hopefully not, though.
My takeaway came and how low key but prominent at the same time the idea of trusting God was in bearing. It was a key statement that Paul made in Corinthians. It happened that we would rely on him. Isaiah 26, the peace is rooted in trust in him. And and then Philippians, the same thing. It's just it made me think of, and I guess my takeaway is related to Donnie McClurkin's songs, I'll Trust You, Lord. The intro of that song, he comes in with a couple of situations, and he's almost like God talking. if this happens, will you trust me? Yes, I'll trust you, Lord. Or what if I do this? Yes, I'll trust you, Lord. What if it costs me this? Yes, I'll trust you, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is my takeaway, that these situations prove my trust and my commitment to trust. I wouldn't even say proves my trust, because I may trust for a while. It proves my commitment to trust, how much I trust. And I want to trust him, so I'm gonna try. I can't say that I am fully settled in yet, but I want to, so I'm gonna try. All right. There was only one in the chat, and it's from Vanessa. She said, "Redefining strength in our weakness. He is strong. We are strong." She also did say, but this is not a takeaway; it's more of a message, I guess, to the group. She said she's proud to see us get to this conclusion and thankful for the reminders. So I guess thank you to you guys for assisting her in that regard. All right. Who wants to pray? Who's up to praying?
So confession, I always feel like my prayers suck, but I'm gonna try.
All right.
That's why I don't volunteer.
Okay. We'll let you know afterwards.
I'm gonna be.
Yeah, tell us your
I'm gonna be-
credentials after.
I'm
okay.
gonna choose not to be timid in this moment. I will be bold.
Be bold.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
Thank you.
That's what we're talking about.
It won't happen. It might not happen again, but well, okay. Lord, thank you for bringing us together today. It allowed us to cover things that I know that we needed to hear and that those who are watching also needed to hear. Thank you for your word guiding us and directing our thought processes and allowing us to clarify our understanding with your understanding and how you see things. I thank you for your grace and your mercy. I also thank you for the people and the opportunity we have to be the lighthouse, to show your kindness and your love and your grace, and to encourage those who may also be going through dark moments, dark spaces, and help us to make, even if it's just a tiny light, Lord, a little beacon, be a way to get them closer to you. I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your mercy. I thank you for your unconditional love. In Jesus' name I do pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lorraine. I'm gonna call on you. I'm calling you specifically.
Oh, let's not do it.
I mean, let's give it some time.
Appreciate you, Henry. Appreciate you.
You gotta keep
I'm
you humble.
saying-
I got you.
saying, let me think about what you said and how you said it.
Gotta rotate. Let's replay that again.
Ever been like that's a horrible conversation, right? That's all it is. So don't ever
Wow.
don't ever miss out on the opportunity to talk to your creator.
All right. Well, we are at 11:05. So gracias to those who lingered with us above time.
11:05.
Yeah, we went an hour over tonight. So that's why I was saying thank you to Lorraine for lingering in that, because it took us a while to get there. And I'm thankful to God for where He helped us to get to. We are here every first and third Friday, God willing. So see us again on the third Friday in July, which I think will be the 21st. I think we are on the 21st. And then we have one more episode after that before we begin year 10, Kenrick.
Wow.
Year 10 starts in August. Looking forward to that. All right, been a decade here doing this. That's a lot of content, a lot of conversations, and
It is.
still fresh material. So that's awesome to see the Word, do that for 10 years. To be a part of that experience and validate that idea.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so join us again on the 21st, and we'll see what God has to share with us next. Until then, get a copy of the reading plan if you don't have one already, from the App Store or online at waterforthethirsty.com, and drink up.
Pick up.
See you guys. Oh, wait. All right, here we go. Holla.